tell us, Premier Clark, why today is so important to you and then to women.
Well, it's a strange, we didn't plan it this way, but it's been an interesting coincidence that this last week we've seen the events that have unfolded in the States around the election. And it really, I mean, we needed to meet today because we need young women and experienced women to be able to get together so that we can connect each other. My experience has been that it's the barriers that we face as women are unique, and lots of times it's harder for us to get ahead than it is for men. And sometimes believing in yourself is not really quite enough, because sometimes it's really hard. You need people who believe in you. And part of today's purpose is to connect young women with older women, experienced women, who can mentor us and be there to believe in us and help us through those tough times. So when we hear a political leader talking the way that Donald Trump does and saying that that is the normal way that decent men talk about women, every young woman can go and ground truth that with someone they know, a male or a female mentor, because every single one of them will tell you that that's an insult to decent men. That is not normal. It is not the way we talk about women, and it is not what is expected of us and of the men around us. But sometimes, Jill, as you're growing up and you're finding your way through your career, it helps to be reminded. And I hope that everybody, all the young women who are here today, will connect with somebody who will believe in them, who will believe in you and be there for you sometimes when you really are having a little bit of trouble even believing in yourself, because that is what makes us all successful in life, not just by ourselves. It's all of us together.
That's great. Janet. Great. Why is today important for you?
I grew up in an all-female household, and I mean all-female household. My father died when I was 8, so I have 3 sisters, I have a mom, all of our dogs were female. I mean, this is it. And so I am the not older woman on the panel, the experienced woman on the panel, but I spent 30 years in tech, and the odds of someone like me and the way I grew up, of being able to grow up in a pretty much male-dominated industry, technology industry, and not only become a leader, but become the president of Microsoft Canada, I would say the odds were probably 1,000,000 to 1 when I was growing up. But the reason I'm here today is there were some incredible coaches, high school, university, incredible mentors, incredible sponsors. You need to know the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, by the way. I know you do in your business. That brought me to where I am today. And so why I wanted to come is, frankly, I think it's my obligation to give back. And I will tell you, I made so many mistakes in the last 30 years of my career. I'm the epitome and your coach of what not to do in business. So I'm happy to share those thoughts with you.
Thank you.
You turned out okay anyway.
Thank you. But I have a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah, but you've both indicated, that the path along the way is not ever really what you exactly imagine it to be, or definitely not as perfect as you imagine it to be. Karina, and I don't know if everybody knows this, just got married 3 days ago. Congratulations. Her husband is sitting over there, dutifully waiting, and they delayed their honeymoon for us.
Crazy.
And so, gosh, talk about giving back, Karina. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's an honor to be here, and it was an easy decision because I've had the pleasure of representing in this country for 18 years, and that means I've represented each and every one of you. And it's the power in signing an autograph and seeing the next generation and seeing the look in the eyes of the next generation of just wanting that hope and that belief, and seeing the power of that moment in telling every little girl that they have a purpose on this earth. And for me, it was important to come here today so that each and every one of you understand that we all have a purpose here on this earth, and it is our obligation to live it. For me, I got to represent this beautiful country. And my coach came up to me when I was crying, the ugly cry on the podium. I wish somebody would have told me to look a bit more graceful, because there's big life-size poses, and I'm like, ah. But he said to me, if you think your purpose on this earth is to kick a soccer ball for Canada, then I failed you. And it started me on this different mission and this mindset that, wow, I'm here for something more than kicking a soccer ball. And if anything for me is for you to think, what am I here for? And what do I do every day to live towards that why? And no matter if you are 18, as you'll hear, or if you're an older woman who is blessed enough to be successful, and in my life I've had women send that elevator back down and lift me up, it's important of all of us to realize that we have a purpose here, and it is your duty to live it. So that's why I came.
That's great. Thank you. Emily, why is it important for you to be here?
Today is really important for me because as a young individual, sometimes the world just doesn't make sense without a picture to put with it. You learn about a lot of things in school and you don't really get to see the real life example all the time. And it's hard when you don't have a mentor out there to say, like, you're going in the right direction, keep going, what you're doing is exactly what you need to be doing, you're in the right mindset. And when you don't have that mentor out there, it's sometimes really easy to get lost. So by connecting the young generation with the more experienced generation, it's great to be able to see a picture line up with everything that you've been learning, and just see the application take place, and to see where the future is going is definitely something that I want to be involved in. So.
I'm not sure everybody knows your story and what you're working on. So if you can give us a little bit of detail on that.
So my company is Swave. I started it when I was 16 in high school. Basically what we do is we use the technology behind a lullaby to transition users from an awakened stage of sleep to a more restorative stage. So if you can only afford to give your body 4 hours of sleep because of your job or school, we're going to make sure those 4 hours are the best 4 hours possible. That's what we do.
All right.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. I know, we've all signed up. and as an example of what might happen in a short moment in your life that maybe at the time doesn't seem like a big deal, but potentially can be, or come back later. I was listening to you and Janet talking, and she was saying, oh my gosh, you're doing what? And you're doing this. And this is the president of Microsoft Canada talking to you. And I was wondering what was going through your mind when she's saying, hey, if that works, I'll buy one.
I gave her first order at the table today. It's amazing.
Well, I was thinking, like, when I first started this, I never would have thought this would happen. In fact, as most people tell you, like, most of the things that you start end up failing. And I thought, yeah, maybe this was just a trial run. This wasn't going to be anything big for me. It was a learning experience, and I was just ready to go into it with open arms. Never would I thought that I'd come this far and go so far. It's really difficult to just say that, like, as a woman to go so far in the field, it's really difficult. And for me to have gone so far with so much support from all of my mentors and my family and friends, it's just been an amazing journey. And I really can't take anything else away from it.
Yeah. You're 18, your journey's just starting, right?
I'd like to hope so.
Yeah. Oh, trust us, it is. Premier, you are also in something that has been a very male-dominated industry. And, when you think about male-dominated industries, for me, it goes back to what I said earlier about the only thing we can do that nobody else can do is have babies. So technically, everything was male-dominated forever. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of change in that, but it still exists, and the culture still exists. So in terms of, politics, what challenges do you encounter? You're the leader of British Columbia, you're female, and you bump up against things every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. The funniest thing, and I talked about it this morning, is that I thought that if I became premier, then everybody would always listen to me, and that hasn't happened. But more seriously, the funny thing is, in one-on-one meetings that I will have with my chief of staff in the room, he's a man. It'll be a male guest. And they want to talk to the premier, but they will talk to the chief of staff because he's the man in the room. When people look at me, some of them do not see leadership. And it's not because of the way I do my hair, it's because I am a woman. And that is a really shocking recognition that I think almost all women in all professions have bumped up against, even when you're a CEO, even when you're a star soccer player, even when you're the manager of the biggest, the director of the biggest news organization in the province and the founder of what's going to be a $1 billion startup. People do not look at you with the same kind of level of, not everybody, but there are always those who do that. And that is what we have to change. It's that second tier of unconscious sexism that exists. And so I really do believe, I mean, we're so close to changing everything, but it isn't going to be my generation that gets to see that done. And I am not going to be a part of seeing it done. And I'm a big believer in the truth of the fact that we are not, don't ask what you're going to do for the world. Ask what the world needs you to do. And one of the things the world needs you young women to do is to make sure you're at the table, commanding respect, refusing to be ignored. Because when you do that, you will give your daughters a different world from the one that my generation has given to you. And that is why we've organized this group to be here today.
Janet, the tech industry, obviously very male-dominated to this day. I know that personally, a bunch of my success has come because at a really early age, I'm talking like teenage years, I learned to, what I call, run with the boys. I learned how to swear like the boys swore. Sorry, bad English. You know, I learned how to be one of the guys, and really in many levels to be accepted into their clubs, no matter what it is. And I don't mean clubs, I just mean the group at work. You needed to run with the boys. Does that still exist in your industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been in the industry for 30 years. It's changed dramatically in some instances. For example, when I went to engineering school, there would be 2 or 3 women, and today at UT, I'm sure there's 30 or 40% women. We'd like to see 50 or 60% women in those kind of industries. So you kind of get used to always being the only woman in the room, and when it goes up through your career, you get used to that. So I don't know if I needed to swear necessarily, but the biggest coaching that I would give to the women, the young women in the room, and then the professional women in the room, is that I think women always work harder and wait to be noticed, and that our male counterparts often they work hard also, but they're very quick to raise their hand for the next big promotion, the next big job, and we tend to wait back and wait for someone to notice us. And when I look at my career, I actually worked at IBM for 19 years. I've been at Microsoft for 15 years. I really had 2 different careers. The first one, I kind of set back, and the second one, I said, I'm going for it. And I let everyone know what I wanted. I also let everyone know what I was willing to do to get that. And what I mean is, you need to have a buy-in on your life. You got to have your new husband, if you have kids, if you have a place you want to live, you got to decide what it is you are willing to do and not to do, to go for whatever the big job it is that it is. And then you need to tell somebody. Because women often, my biggest quote is, your manager is not a mind reader. They don't know what you want unless you tell them. And you should tell everybody, not just your manager, your friends, your coach, your mentors. And people genuinely want to help you get where you want to go, but you got to share what your dream is.
Karina, I love what you were saying earlier about, your purpose isn't to kick a soccer ball, but you spent so much of your youth just entirely focused on that. Talk about the shift now as you move into the next chapter of your life, and where you see that going, and how you see other women helping you, or you helping other women.
I think I've come to realize that soccer was a platform. And I think I used to be the shyest kid, which nobody ever believes. You couldn't get me to speak. Now you can't shut me up. But I moved to Canada when I was 8. And the first day of school, a kid put a firecracker in my hand and went off. And I felt like I had no value. And it was sport that changed that for me. It gave me confidence. It gave me a connection. I was invited to sleepovers, and then I felt cool. And I remember having this big dream, and you talk about sharing your dream. And people would be like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be an Olympian. And there was no women's soccer at the time. And people thought I was crazy. And I remember being too loud about it, but my first big team I tried out for was the U15 provincial team, and I got cut. Now, everyone else made it but me. And it was a deciding moment, because I remember driving in the car and I was like crying, and my mom's like, you know what moms do, she's like, it's okay. And my dad was just, I was like, what's wrong with you, Dad? And he turned to me and he said, what are you gonna do about it? And being cut was the best thing that ever happened to me, because the next year I did 15 minutes more every single day. And especially for you guys when you're young, when you start to put in the work yourself, you start to build this confidence that you believe in. Yeah, that's true. And I tried it for a year older the next year. Not the same coach who cut me, he came by, he's like, LeBlanc, you're here. I was like, you said I'm not what you're looking for. And I made the year older. And from the day I was cut to 16 months later, I went from my heroes being on my wall at home to them standing next to me in a sold-out stadium. And I think what sport teaches you is a lot of things. It teaches you about teamwork, leadership, it teaches you about working hard, but it teaches you that if you dare to dream a crazy, 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 crazy dream, anything's possible. And for me right now, I'm a UNICEF ambassador, which is amazing, because I get to travel the world, and I get to travel the world and speak and be a voice, because football is the biggest sport in the world, or soccer, sorry. But I think I'm rediscovering myself, and it's a beautiful thing, because it's like, whatever you've learned in life, you gotta take it and like, just live it and believe it and be it. And that's what I'm doing. And people think I'm crazy all the time, but I think I'm kind of cool.
We had Karina on the Global BC Morning Show over a year ago. We were looking for a new host, and we had a bunch of people come through and guest host, and Karina was one of them. And we all looked up and went, that's the coolest woman we've ever put on TV. So you're right, you're very cool. Emily, this is all advice from people who've gone down the path, you know, decades ahead of you. You started off with a real dream early on, obviously at 16. So maybe give some advice from your age perspective on, you know, what the next few years look like and what you're already thinking about your success and how you're going to manifest that.
Well, my advice for the next gen would be to not forget who you are. There are so many different definitions of success, and everyone has to define their own version of success, because what I think success is different from what other people think it is. And when you find your own version of success, you learn to work towards that, and you set your own goals, and you find your own path, and that's what makes you different, and that's what makes you stand out. Don't be afraid to take a second and look back and see how far you've come, because that's kind of what puts things in perspective and helps you forge the path ahead. If it wasn't for me doing that, I would still be stuck in sciences where I knew I would have no future. So I'm glad I made the switch to business. The future for me is more just finding out who I am. I'm all about self-discovery and constant pivoting. I love the idea of taking a second to think about any mistakes that I've made and any changes that I could have done in my life, and taking a second to improve myself, because self-improvement is something that goes a long way. Even when it's 10 minutes a day and you just sit and think, maybe I should have eaten a bran bar instead of chocolate cake. Right? So.
Okay, I'm going to vote for the chocolate cake, just to be on the safe side. Thank you. And I love what you just said about define yourself and be yourself, because I think there's a myth out there that being successful only happens, and this is really typical, I think, for young girls and women, being successful only happens to the popular girls. So who was popular in high school? Are you surprised? I wasn't popular in high school. Were you really popular in high school?
What's Nothing wrong with band kids, by the way, but I was a band kid. Those were my friends.
Okay, so you can be a band kid. Karina, you said you were shy?
I was shy, absolutely shy. And it was sport that changed it. But I think one thing for the young kids is, like, I remember the World Cup here was in 2015. And the most popular girl who I always wanted to try to balance with, I remember she had a sign and said, I wish I did what you did in high school. And I think that's one of the things of, like, for me at that age, and a lot of you guys at that age, you try to do what the cool people are doing. But I would go out and I'd be home by like 9:30 at night because I had a dream. And I think that's where you have to challenge yourself to dream bigger than you can even see. And understand that 10, 15 years from now, maybe the most popular person won't be the most successful person. So see your success in a different way, and I dare you to go out, and John Herdman said this to me this past summer before the Olympics. He said, I dare you to fail greatly at being who you are. And I think that's a great thing for the younger generation, is because you get wrapped up in the now, but the future is what you can control, and you can go after that.
Let's talk a little bit about that. We've got just under 10 minutes left. I dare you to fail greatly at being who you are. So explain that.
I think beyond, personally, all of my greatest failures laid my greatest successes. If you guys followed our team, in 2011, we came dead last at the World Cup, and we were expected to do great things, and being extremely embarrassed in the lovely media. I remember he walked up to me right after the loss and said, how's it feel to let your country down? I'm like, awesome. What I really wanted to say to him, I didn't, but 9 months later, we were on the podium, seeing our flag rise and seeing our dream come true. And had we not failed and come dead last at the World Cup, there's no chance we would have been on the podium. And what inspired us was actually you guys. Because I remember we lost to the lovely Americans in a double overtime game, and we felt broken, and we felt we'd let the country down again. And what got us back is there was a video of the next generation crying, and former Prime Minister saying, bring home the medal, ladies. And we were always inspired, because when you go to the Olympics, everybody wants to win a gold medal. We were always inspired by inspiring the next generation. And to see your reaction was what gave us that extra bit. And again, had we not failed, we never would have succeeded. So when John said to me, dare to fail greatly at being yourself, he said, don't be put into a box. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Own who you are. Be the best version of yourself. And if they don't like you, they don't. But great things are there for you if you dare to be yourself and dare to fail greatly. So,
Premier, yeah, that's fantastic. I think, we've all had that young girl experience. We've all been that person, and you're unsure of yourself, and we don't give ourselves enough credit. When you look back, Premier, over your political career, are there failures along that line that you're glad you experienced?
Well, maybe I wouldn't describe it. It's not a classic failure, but it is the 2 years between I got elected as Premier of the province when I was elected by my party as leader. So I automatically became Premier. And then I had to go to an election 2 years later to seek the mandate from the people. And we were 20 points behind in the polls. Our party was $5.5 million in debt. Everybody was saying I was absolutely the worst thing that had ever happened to the province and my party, and it was universal. I was a loser of historic proportions. And at first, that was hard. And what happened to me was a little bit like what you described. I didn't decide, I'm going to show all those people I can do it. I'm going to be better than they think, and I'm going to prove how great I am. What I did was I just one day decided I am going to be who I am, and I'm going to do the best I possibly can do, and I am not going to be afraid of making any mistakes, and I am going to free myself from the fear of being judged by all of these people who've already decided that I am a loser. And freeing myself from that made it possible for me to go on and win. People said it was the biggest comeback in the history of British Columbia. And I won it not because I had something to prove. I won it because I decided that I was going to be good enough for me, and I was going to be true to me, and I was going to be who I was. And if other people didn't like who I was, that's okay. But I was going to go down, if I lost, knowing that I did it as myself.
That's good.
Just like you. It's the same
Janet?
story, right?
Yeah, I'd like to answer the question a little bit differently because I've had many failures and successes in my life, but I want to talk about the failure of women just in general in society right now in terms of we're not making enough progress. And one of the reasons why I'm here on the stage today is I truly think that change happens from tone to the top. And I'm so proud to live in Canada and work in Canada with the Prime Minister and you, Premier Clark, and what you're doing. It's the appointments you make. It's people notice when you surround yourself with a diverse cabinet. People notice when our Prime Minister said it was 2016, which is what, 2015, I think, it was like, duh. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? And from my personal perspective, 7 out of 11 of my my vice presidents across Canada are women, the most diverse for sure, leadership team and probably all of tech, not just Microsoft. People notice, and I think the way we make change is when you have leadership that's actually going to step out and make the difference because people will then start following. And I think we might find a time that we actually aren't talking about are we going to move it from 27% to 29% in tech, which is what the number is today. And so first of all, again, that's why I'm here. When you asked me, I really applaud the work you're doing. I applaud the work the Prime Minister's doing, and I think we can make a difference here in Canada.
Are you hoping, Emily, to stay in Canada, to have a career in Canada?
Yes, I am hoping to stay in Canada.
That's another big thing that our country faces is brain drain, where people see more money or better career opportunities, and so that also has something to do with the Prime Minister and our federal government in terms of creating a better space in our country for people to stay. I want to wrap us up with talking about how fortunate we are to be women of any age in this era in Canada. So Janet, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you want to expand a little bit more, because we had that conversation at our table before you got here, Premier, but I know you'll dial in quickly, about just what we're taking for granted. We have so much room to grow still for pay equity, for gender equity, just so much room to grow. And yet, I want you all to realize how far ahead Canada is. So what's your experience in that?
Yeah, first of all, I'm an American. I've been living in Canada for 4 years, and last night I was hysterically running around Vancouver trying to get my federal expat ballot in because I'm for sure going to make sure I get to vote in this election. And we're all hoping for the biggest loser down south, and hopefully we can make that happen. But there's just so many things. You should be proud, the students in the room. I will tell you, I was in Banff yesterday with the superintendent board of all the superintendents in Canada. We have an incredible education system in Canada. What we're seeing from the high school students to some of the incredible universities all across Canada. I think our biggest thing, to your point you already made, is we got to keep them here. And so some of the best minds, some of the best technical minds are coming out of this country in artificial intelligence, big data, a lot of the big concepts around curing cancer, as a matter of fact. But we've got to figure out a way to actually keep this talent here in this country because it's an incredible country to live and to work in, particularly for women, with the leadership message I already said.
Karina?
I've gotten to travel the world being a UNICEF ambassador too, and I was in Honduras, and I was going to just drop a soccer ball, and there's 12 and 13-year-olds who are putting down their babies because you only know what you know. They don't have opportunities to go to forums where they can hear women speak and believe they can be somebody. They just see that that's what their mothers and mothers have done. So I think it's important for us to understand the importance of us being at the top to be the change and have that voice for all ages, because you never know how far your voice will go. And I think what's important is that in our country, again, I get to travel the world, and it's one of the most beautiful things is people now look and be like, oh, you're from Canada, eh? And you're like, haha. Yeah. And they're like, you guys got that cool Prime Minister. And women are really rocking it out there. And I think it's important that every woman understands that we all play a role in that, and we should be a part of the change and believe in it and do it together.
Premier?
I think we don't understand, I think we forget, or maybe we don't know if you haven't traveled a lot. Like the others have said, how lucky we are to live in a country where if you get sick, you don't go broke. Mm-hmm. And where the neighborhood that you live in doesn't deter, and the community that you come from, and the amount of education that your parents had, and how much money they earned, doesn't determine what you want to be and what you get to be. And I think that maintaining that value as Canadians, is one of the biggest challenges that we have. We have to always be vigilant that we are making it easier for everybody to have an equal opportunity to succeed, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, no matter what your parents did for a living. Because where you come from should not determine where you end up. And Canada has always been about that. But I think it's the kind of thing that if we're not vigilant, we can forget about it. We can lose it. And we can lose opportunities for the middle class, lose opportunities for anybody who wants to be great to achieve what they want to achieve. And I think that is the challenge of our times. As we look around the world and we see people, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, I think in Canada we have a real opportunity to create something unique. And that is, I think, the most important thing for all of us through education, through healthcare, through fora like this. That's the most important thing for us to always be striving to continue to achieve and to maintain in this country.
Well said. Emily.
In terms of just inequality, and we are the next generation. So the change that we want to happen, we are the driving force, and we're the ones that are going to make it happen. And I think that it's going to be absolutely amazing. We are on the right path for success, and change is right outside the door, and we just have to take that first step. It's right there. All the doors are lined up. The experienced generation has laid out the foundation, and it's just our job to reach out and grab it, and we're so close, and it's right there for us, and it's so close that I can basically see it. I have never experienced inequality to the extent that some of you have, and I'm very blessed to say that I haven't. So I know that the country is moving in a direction where equality is very close.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
right on. I love that optimism.
And the wonderful thing is that while this is all happening in Canada and people like Karina and Janet and the Premier are facilitating change for women like you, we are also setting the bar higher for women around the world. Women who don't have the rights and privileges we have and we can sometimes take for granted. So never forget that not only are you helping your neighbor or your sister or your friend, you're also making a statement to the rest of the world that this is the way young girls and women deserve to be treated, deserve to be thought of. And it's important that we understand that every day, because it's an easy message to get lost when you get bogged down in your own life. Thank you all so very much, and a huge round of applause to our panelists. Thank you, ladies, for the inspiration. Wonderful.